We saw a crash of one of the flying saucers. One of them was still alive.
This time on Unexplained Mysteries, target Earth. UFOs might be preparing to attack our planet. Security was breached at 2 top-secret missile bases, possibly by alien spacecraft.
This was not an airplane. He had my authority to shoot.
In England, there's been a sudden increase in reports of strange triangular craft.
From the left, this enormous craft came over the houses.
And I couldn't believe my eyes, because there was no sound at all from this object.
The military made contact with the craft, with devastating results.
United States Navy Tomcat aircraft was seen to disappear in close proximity to one of these gigantic triangular-shaped craft.
We'll explain the origin of the most famous term in ufology.
What Arnold's sighting did was to give these things a name, flying saucers.
The Pacific Northwest has seen a surge of sightings.
One of these discs looked like it was going to crash right near his boat.
And the military is powerless to stop an alien assault on Washington, D.C.
He flew into this cluster of light. And then he said, I see them. They're all around me.
A cop sees something otherworldly.
I could see a white object.
But it seems the Air Force covered up the incident.
They have no documentation to place the lunar lander.
A war hero pursues an unidentified object.
No one's ever going to convince me I didn't see it, because there were too many of us that did.
And the pilot dies in a crash shrouded in mystery.
No one at the funeral home saw the body.
Memories of the famous Roswell incident from witnesses who lived through it.
I have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
I reached over and I got it. And I picked it up and played with it.
Why did the military force them to keep quiet?
The clamps came down.
And the emotional fallout that resulted from the government's threats.
Not being able to tell the truth, I think, hurt our family. I feel like a part of my life has been ripped off. I feel like a part of our security has been destroyed.
And we'll sum it all up for you in the Unex Report, here on Unexplained Mysteries. Target Earth. Alien spacecraft may have already made contact with Earth. Experts say one of the most dangerous incidents occurred at 2 U.S. missile bases. Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana. Near the nuclear site, codenamed November, a base that was supposed to be impenetrable.
I got a call from one of my security guards upstairs. He said that he and other guards had seen UFOs flying over the area. I didn't think he was serious. Basically, we hung up.
The missiles were armed with nuclear warheads. It was nearly impossible to get past the heavy security. But someone, or something, did.
About 5 minutes later, he calls back and he said that there was a UFO hovering just outside the front gate. And he was very frightened. Within a minute or two of the second call, the missiles started shutting down or going off alert. We were basically shocked to see our missiles going no-go sequentially. The only thing I could think was, oh my God.
12 hours later, at another missile site called Echo, the same thing happened. Without warning, their missiles also shut down.
We just looked at each other and said, I don't understand this. How could this happen? There is no command in the capsule to turn them off. There was no switch, no off switch. They did not break.
Like Salas, Crawford also received a call from a terrified security guard.
And he could not identify what he was seeing. In other words, this was not an airplane. It was way too low and too close, and it also didn't go away. I guess I finally convinced him that if the whatever it was came inside the fence, he had my authority to shoot, which made him feel really good. But he said, sir, I don't really think that'll do much good.
3 hours later, the missiles came back online.
It just started back up normally like they had installed it from the factory.
The system designers couldn't figure out what had happened. Nobody could figure out what happened. It lends credibility to the fact that something very, very unusual happened.
The military blamed the shutdown on an electromagnetic pulse, a technology which was not man-made, and the Air Force disavowed the reports of their own personnel.
I know, for example, that I briefed my commander on the UFO incidents. I know for a fact that those statements in that historical document are false.
Incredibly, Salas and Crawford never knew about each other until Salas wrote an article about the incident. Crawford read it and knew that he too could finally share his experience. Salas and Crawford met for the very first time.
You've been doing for 30 years.
It's been a long time. I remember you now.
Salas showed Crawford his research.
You know, that's interesting that you get together something from the Air Force that specifically says it happened.
Both men believe the Air Force is trying to cover up the two incidents.
I think when you know something, you tell it. You write it down. There's no reason not to put it public.
Certainly, if the UFO, whatever it is, has the capability of shutting down our missiles as they did, it's in the public interest to make this an open debate as to what it all means.
Sightings of unusual craft are taking place all over the world. In the skies over England, witnesses report giant triangular craft.
For sure, in all cases, people report these things made no noise whatsoever. Some have been seen only a few hundred feet up.
From the left, this enormous craft came over the houses.
And I couldn't believe my eyes, because there was no sound at all from this object.
It banked over sharp to the left, and then I could see it was a huge triangle.
The British media have named these craft Silent Vulcans, after a British military plane known as the Avro Vulcan B-2.
The Vulcan was a pretty much triangular-shaped aircraft, but certainly it was no bigger than, let's say, for instance, 60 feet across, and nothing like the kind of size that we associate with today's flying triangles, as it were.
Some say the objects are U.S. stealth bombers, but the experts aren't buying it.
I just cannot believe that something as big as that could be described as a conventional super-secret stealth aircraft.
Manchester, a Silent Vulcan nearly collided with a passenger jet as it was landing.
Quite suddenly, what the crew described as a triangular, very brightly lit craft flew past them very, very close on their right-hand side. And the reports mentioned that the co-pilot instinctively ducked because it was so close. Now, they were clearly shaken up by this. They asked radar if they had any traffic, and radar didn't see anything.
After a year's investigation, the British Aviation Authority concluded that the craft was unknown. Shepard tried to get more information, but he was stonewalled.
I've written to the captain and he hasn't replied. He's fed up with the whole thing. This comes back to the culture of silence. The line of least resistance is to say nothing about these things.
But experts have logged a high number of sightings.
We had 52 incidents of flying triangles over the city, hovering over main streets, buildings, highways, cars, and this caused quite a lot of consternation to the local public.
And more Silent Vulcans have been spotted outside of England, in the U.S.
In the Hudson Valley area of New York, literally hundreds of these things were reported by some pretty sane, level-headed people.
We looked over the top of the trees, and there was this object there out of nowhere. This great big object. It was about 300 foot wide, the size of a football field hanging over your head.
And more were sighted in Europe.
There were several thousand sightings, some of them at low level, of triangular-shaped objects over Belgium. Not just ordinary civilians, but highly qualified observers, such as military pilots.
The Belgian Air Force was very open and disclosed how many missions they'd flown against flying triangles.
They released an F-16 cockpit film that showed the triangle accelerating from 0 to 900 kilometers per hour within seconds.
They dropped from 10,000 feet to 500 feet in a few seconds. They were performing aerobatics that no human pilot could have withstood the G-forces.
Other ominous incidents were reported by U.S. military personnel.
On 2 occasions, United States Navy Tomcat aircraft were seen to disappear in close proximity to one of these gigantic triangular-shaped craft. And I spoke to the witnesses in both instances, and I'm convinced they were telling the truth.
Experts fear that these close encounters pose a major security threat.
Some of these craft are dangerous. I have no doubts about that whatsoever. And some of the beings associated with them are dangerous. I don't think they have our best interests at heart.
Coming up on Unexplained Mysteries, a pilot files the first ever UFO report.
They looked something like a pie plate that was cut in half.
Fishermen claim to see UFOs descending toward their boat.
One of the UFO appeared, from their point of view, to perhaps be having mechanical problems.
The Air Force fears that unknown crafts flew within striking distance of our nation's capital.
Described them as brilliant blue-white light. The Air Force radar expert thought they were picking up metallic objects.
The government's investigation of a sighting may have actually been a cover-up.
This is the government trying to do its fancy little dance.
In the skies above Kentucky, Air National Guardsmen see an unknown craft.
The UFO was in the air for 4 hours.
A famous pilot goes after the object.
He said, my 2 wingmen are coming in. We want hot guns, and we want them now.
An alien spacecraft might have crashed near Roswell, New Mexico.
I have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
The Roswell survivors finally speak out about the military cover-up.
I just wish we could get to the bottom of this while I'm still alive.
And we'll give you the final summation in our Unex report. It's all here on Unexplained Mysteries.
When tragedies occur and questions need to be answered.
Who had broken into the gun store?
When lives are at stake and justice needs to be served.
Why was she shot without even being asked for the money?
I saw 2 figures who had ski masks and were carrying guns.
It's time to examine Exhibit A. The science of forensics made real. Mondays to Fridays on Zone Reality.
You got a problem.
What do we have today?
She was a tenant from hell.
Okay.
Who you gonna call? How about the one man who really knows what's going on down in the city?
I know how it's done. I T-boned him.
I'm not responsible.
Why did you flee the scene of an accident?
All rise, please. Judge Mazziarello is in session.
You're talking to me like I'm an idiot. I'm not an idiot. That's my ruling. Case closed.
Street Court on Zone Reality. Beyond a world that's predictable and safe lies the intriguing.
And I saw this large globe of light.
The vicious.
It's the most violent thing I've ever seen.
And the terrifying.
They don't feel safe. None of us feel safe.
Beyond what we know and what we understand.
You can't explain everything with science.
Lie the unsolved mysteries. Mondays to Fridays on Zone Reality.
Unexplained Mysteries target Earth. UFOs. Throughout history, people have claimed to see them. Here's the account of the first official sighting. Mount Rainier, just outside Seattle, Washington. An experienced search and rescue pilot named Kenneth Arnold said he saw 9 flying objects.
I could see them only plainly when they seemed to tip their wing or whatever it was, and the sun flashed on them. They looked something like a pie plate that was cut in half. They seemed to flip and flash in the sun just like a mirror, in such a way that it almost blinded you when you looked at them through your plexiglass windshield. As I kept looking at them, I kept looking for their tails. They didn't have any tails.
Arnold calculated the craft were flying at 1,500 miles per hour, much faster than any man-made planes. And people were fascinated by his statement that they were flying like a saucer.
1947 marks the beginning of the UFO era. This is something that everybody agrees on. What Arnold's sighting did was to give these things a name, flying saucers and connect them to flying saucers.
The Pacific Northwest has seen a surge of sightings.
One of these discs looked like it was going to crash right near his boat.
And the military is powerless to stop an alien assault on Washington, D.C.
He flew into this cluster of light. And then he said, I see them. They're all around me.
A cop sees something otherworldly.
I could see a white object.
But it seems the Air Force covered up the incident.
They have no documentation to place the lunar lander.
Craft came over the houses.
And I couldn't believe my eyes because there was no sound at all from this object.
The military made contact with the craft with devastating results.
United States Navy Tomcat aircraft were seen to disappear in close proximity to one of these gigantic triangular-shaped craft.
We'll explain the origin of the most famous term in ufology.
What Arnold's sighting did was to give these things a name.
We saw a crash of one of the flying saucers. One of them was still alive.
This time on Unexplained Mysteries, target Earth. UFOs might be preparing to attack our planet. Security was breached at 2 top-secret missile bases, possibly by alien spacecraft.
This was not an airplane. He had my authority to shoot.
In England, there's been a sudden increase in reports of strange triangular craft.
From the left, this enormous
fallout that resulted from the government's threats.
Not being able to tell the truth, I think, hurt our family. I feel like a part of my life has been ripped off. I feel like a part of our security has been destroyed.
And we'll sum it all up for you in the Unex Report, here on Unexplained Mysteries. Target Earth. Alien spacecraft may have already made contact with Earth. Experts say a war hero pursues an unidentified object.
No one's ever going to convince me I didn't see it, because there were too many of us that did.
And the pilot dies in a crash shrouded in mystery.
No one at the funeral home saw the body.
Memories of the famous Roswell incident from witnesses who lived through it.
I have pieces of what is called a flying saucer.
I reached over and I got it. And I picked it up and played with it.
Why did the military force them to keep quiet?
The clamps came down.
And the emotion